Good evening, everybody. Welcome back in to Live and Learn. Hope you're doing well on this Monday, December the 16th. Hope you all had a great weekend. Pretty excellent weekend. Hung out with some friends. Got to watch some hockey. Watched the Moncton Wildcats for the first time in person this season. Pretty good team, if I do say so myself. Pretty good team. Caleb Denayer, who's arguably their best player, stood out. Should be a high draft pick. But they are at the break here. They're the top team in the queue, one of the top teams in the country. And that's great. So I do think they need to do some work the bottom of the roster at the trade deadline to really be an elite team to contend for the President's Cup and also then contend for the Memorial Cup. They need to improve the roster a little bit, but they have a good team in Moncton. And had pretty decent crowds this weekend as well. So that was good to see. Whatever you got up to, I hope you enjoyed it. A lot of stuff happened this weekend. We are a little over a week away from Christmas. We are a little over a week away from the start of the World Junior Hockey Championships, which will begin on Boxing Day. And just an upcoming schedule for the program. We'll do 3 shows Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. We'll get going into the weekend. We'll preview the Saturday NFL games on on Thursday to get you ready because there's 2 Saturday games this week. If you didn't know, Texans, Chiefs, Steelers, Ravens, those 2 games on Saturday. But I'm also doing a Sunday show this week as a preview for the World Junior Hockey Championships. I want to get into the entire tournament. I love it every year. We'll go over Canada's complete roster. We'll talk about the defending champions, the United States. Sweden, underrated team to me coming in. And yeah, it starts on Boxing Day. There was a pre-tournament game in Moncton yesterday between Slovakia and Germany, which is cool to see the Avenir get another, decent game like this. So we're going to do that on Sunday. We'll do a show next Monday, recapping the NFL weekend. And then likely a show the 27th. 27th is the Friday. We'll be doing shows after World Junior Games, recapping it all throughout the tournament. So look out for that. That is all forthcoming. But let's go back to yesterday. So many NFL storylines. So many things to look at. There's things in the NHL. They're interesting. Baseball moves continue to happen after the Juan Soto bombshell dropped last week. But I want to get to Bills-Lions, but we're going to do that as a feature story, and there's lots to chew on there. I want to start with quick hits with the Kansas City Chiefs. And this is less about their overall outlook. Can they win another Super Bowl? Can they go on a run? I think we all know the answer is yes. My thing is, yesterday they beat the Cleveland Browns. They covered a spread for the first time in a long time. 4.5. They won by 14 in Cleveland. But Patrick Mahomes injured his ankle. He has a high ankle sprain. And this is not foreign. He injures his ankle every year. It happens to him. He's got bad ankles. And now including yesterday, they have 3 games in 11 days. In Cleveland yesterday, home to the Texans on Saturday, and then in Pittsburgh a week from Wednesday, which is Christmas Day. So 3 games in 11 days. Mahomes has a high ankle sprain They are 13-1, and they need to win 2 of their last 3 games to keep the number 1 seed and to get home field advantage and a bye in the first round of the playoffs. Also, to avoid Buffalo until the AFC Championship game, who is their only loss on their schedule this year. And they got Houston, at Pittsburgh, at Denver. So a difficult schedule down the stretch. No gimme games like the Bills, for instance, who have the Jets twice, or the Patriots twice, and the Jets in the middle. Really good way to wrap up your season. So the discussion point is, what do they do? Mahomes, reportedly, should be able to practice this week. But he's banged up. He's playing behind maybe the worst offensive line of his career so far. And you want him healthy come playoff time. The Chiefs proved last year they don't need to play every game at Arrowhead. They can win a Super Bowl on the road. They won in Baltimore. They won in Buffalo last year. So it can't happen. If I'm Kansas City, I'm a gambling man. I like to gamble every once in a while. I like to make picks. I like to play poker. Poker's fun because you never know what the other person has and what they're going to lay down the table, whether it's going to be better than you or worse than you. But you have to have confidence. And I look at the situation with the Chiefs. If I'm Kansas City, I'm sitting out Patrick Mahomes on Saturday. Carson Wentz is starting the game against Houston. Because I believe Kansas City can beat Houston without Mahomes. Houston, 9-5, going to win their division, have already clinched a playoff spot. They are an average team. They're not great. To me, they're not elite at anything. CJ Stroud has regressed a little bit in his second season. They won a game yesterday they probably shouldn't have won. They have Derek Stingley Jr. is a really good defensive player. Danielle Hunter is great. Will Anderson Jr. is fantastic when he's on the field. But I think the Chiefs, with that defense, can beat the Texans without Patrick Mahomes. And I'm willing to gamble, giving him some rest and playing Carson Wentz. Because if you beat Houston, then you are 14-1 with 2 games left. And you know we only need to win one of the next 2. And if they beat Houston, I'm sitting out Patrick Mahomes against Pittsburgh as well. Carson Wentz starts in Pittsburgh. Probably not going to be favored. Probably won't win that game, but you never know. It's the NFL. It's weird. You go play that game. If you lose it, you have to beat Denver. Mahomes comes back in. He plays in the last week of the regular season. And I also think it's important to play that game because you play that game, and then if you're the number 1 seed, you get a bye. So I really don't want my quarterback sitting out 2 full weeks because you're thinking he's going to be sitting out a week and a half between now and then. Go into Denver, beat Denver, as they always do, lock up the number 1 seed, then you get a bye week to prepare for Baltimore, whoever you might play in the divisional round at home. That's my approach. Get him healthy towards the end of the season. And Carson Wentz is not a bad backup quarterback. The Kansas City Chiefs offense is not elite whatsoever. But Isaiah Pacheco's back. Run the football. Start giving the ball more to Xavier Worthy. See what he can do with the ball in his hands. Hopefully can get Hollywood Brown back before the end of the regular season. And I'm willing to risk that. Because Kansas City Their outlook has to be, it's only Super Bowl. Who cares about the rest of it? And I'm willing to risk losses now to have a healthier Mahomes come playoff time. Because worst case, you have to go play a wild card round game against either the Chargers, who you've beaten twice this year, or the Broncos, a team you're likely going to beat twice this year. That's worst case scenario. Two divisional teams that you have all kinds of success against. I don't think Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Steve Spagnuolo are sweating that scenario, are worried about that matchup personally. I don't. If I had to guess, Mahomes is going to play this Saturday. Because that's just who he is. He's a competitor. If he can get out there, he's going to play. And I don't blame him for that, and I don't blame the Chiefs for that. I do think the number one seed is really important for them. Because the Chiefs are extremely vulnerable. They are showing signs of weakness. Their offense is not explosive. It's not threatening. But they find ways to win. They are the best team in pro sports at winning games. Period. End of discussion. And there's not a close second. They just have mastered the act of winning games. Beautiful, ugly, doesn't matter. They do it. They find a way to do it. And they played pretty well. They controlled that game yesterday. Their defense came up with 4 turnovers. They attacked Jameis. They picked off Jameis twice. A couple of forced fumbles. So they know how to play. They attack. They had a couple bad weeks. But Spags has this team looking good again. Feeling confident in themselves. The big question is Mahomes, and that'll be a discussion point throughout the week. And again, I haven't seen the line yet, and I'm curious to see it because it'll be heavily dependent on whether Vegas believes that Patrick Mahomes will be on the field. How about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Shout out to Baker Mayfield and the Bucs, who go on the road to Los Angeles to play the Chargers, and they absolutely smoked them. They've had injuries all year. You can look at the situation and go, they're screwed. They're not going to make the playoffs. Baker Mayfield, 4 touchdown passes, 2 to the future Hall of Famer Mike Evans, who had 159 yards receiving, missed games because of an injury. He's trying his damnedest to get to 1,000 yards for the 12th consecutive year. He's up to 759 with 9 touchdowns on the season with 3 games remaining. But to me, the Bucs, the big win is now they have games remaining against all teams below 500. Chargers above 500, you go in and beat them. Now, at Dallas this week, Dallas 6-8. Home to the Panthers in week 17, then home to the Saints in the final week of the season. They have control of the situation. They control their own destiny. They should finish 11-6 and win the NFC South for the 2nd consecutive year, despite the fact that the Atlanta Falcons, who play tonight, Monday Night Football, are 2-0 against the Bucs this year. It shouldn't matter. because they should win both of those games. All three of those games, pardon me. 2 home games, 1 road game in Dallas next Sunday night. But Baker's been awesome since he went to Tampa. Todd Bowles is a good head coach. They're going to get another home playoff game like they did last year. Likely a 4-5 matchup in the NFC. And let's play this game. If the season ended today, always fun. The season ends today, the Buccaneers actually would be a 3 seed. They're ahead of the Rams. Fun. They would play the Packers, which is no gimme for the Packers, by the way. You're going on the road, going to be hot in Tampa. Green Bay lost in Tampa a number of years ago. Yeah, Tom Brady was the quarterback, but still lost with Aaron Rodgers. Even to say they were the 4 seed, and the Rams went ahead of them. That's Buccaneers playing the Vikings. That would scare the hell out of me if I'm the Vikings. You have a great season. You have a better record than the team you're playing, but then you have to go on the road. Sam Darnold decides to have himself a stinker. Then all of a sudden you're out. And your great season meant nothing. And the Buccaneers beat you, just like they did the Eagles last year. Same kind of story, same kind of situation. But the Bucs are sneaky good to me. And Baker, when he's playing like this, and you have Bucky Irving, who ran for over 100 yards, and he's great. And Jalen McMillan out of UW, who's starting to step up. Mike Evans on the field, healthy. Cade Otton, solid tight end. The Buccaneers are threatening. And they're going to be a tough out for a team that makes the playoffs, but you have to go play on the road in Tampa in mid-January. Not a fun game. I wouldn't want to play them. Vikings, who play tonight, by the way, Monday Night Football, we'll pick that game later. 2 Monday Night Football games tonight, if you didn't know. They start within half hour of each other, and both games are meh. What kind of question is that? Some quick hockey headlines before we move on. Senators finding ways to win. I credit the Senators. They began a 9-game road trip on Friday. They're on that 9-game road trip because of the World Junior Hockey Championships. And that road trip does get interrupted because of a Christmas break, so it's not completely on the road the entire time. But they win in Carolina on Friday. Really good victory. Then they go to Pittsburgh the next night and they win in overtime. Brady Tkachuk gets his 9th career overtime winner, which is more than his old man. So he breaks his old man's record. They win the game. And the East is such a cesspool of mediocrity is my nice word that I thought I'd use. I wanted to go crap. But I just said crap. So let's go with crap. But the Senators just winning a couple games. They are now in the second wild card spot. They are 2 points back of the Bruins with 2 games in hand. And they're right in the mix. And if you look at the teams below them, Flyers, they're better than the Flyers. Penguins, they're better than the Penguins. Islanders, they're better than the Islanders. Columbus, every team below them, they are better than that team. They might even be better than Tampa when they're playing at their best. And I'm not just saying that to be nice. Tampa's got elite talent, better players overall than Ottawa. But overall Ottawa's team, better. Tampa's got the flashy names and they score a lot of goals, but they also defend horribly, and that can catch up with you. But credit to Ottawa. trying to dig their way out of a ditch. If they can see Ottawa before the Christmas break, they are in Seattle tomorrow, in Calgary on Thursday, in Vancouver, in Edmonton. 4 games that's a tough. That Western Canadian road trip is no longer a gimme. Just ask Florida. They had a tough go. If you can get 4 points this week, that's a victory to me. You'd love 6. You'd love 6. But that would be a positive to me. Just coming up, they got Flames, Canucks, Oilers, Jets, Minnesota, Dallas, St. Louis, Detroit. That's their road trip. That's tough. That's a tough one for the Ottawa Senators. A lot of games out west, time zone, things of that nature. Cold weather. But credit to them for finding ways to win games. You had the Brady Tkachuk rumors, Michael Anlauer coming out and speaking on it. Just push past it. Forget about that crap and play. And I think that's what Tkachuk is doing. He's a consummate professional. He's a leader. He's the captain of that team. And I like the way they're playing. Now, Buffalo. The Buffalo Sabres, on the other hand. "13 years since they've made the playoffs. 13 years. They have fired GMs. They've moved out players. They traded Jack Eichel, who went on to win a Stanley Cup with Vegas. Brought in coach after coach. Doesn't work. And now they've lost 10 games in a row. Mid-December. And they are 1 point better than the Montreal Canadiens after 31 games. Players met with the owner today. The Pegula said he thinks that the answers are in-house. Don't expect a major trade. Don't expect major shakeups with Kevin Adams or Lindy Ruff, who's in his first season back coaching. Buffalo, they almost come up with new ways to lose. Because I like their team. Tage Thompson's a really good player. Rasmus Dahlin is a really good player. They haven't won a game since November 23rd against the San Jose Sharks. It's the last time they won a game. They haven't won a home game since November 14th against St. Louis. If you look up just player statistics, Tage Thompson, point per game. Alex Tuch, 25 and 31. Zucker, 21 and 31. That's pretty good for him. Peterka, 20 and 29. Dahlin, 19 and 25. Power, 19 and 31. It's a young group. And there's guys that aren't performing. Dylan Cousins isn't having a great season. Jack Quinn isn't producing the way they thought he would. Their goaltending has been okay. Hasn't been great. It's almost as if it's a team that needs an adult in the room and they don't have one. The inmates are running the asylum in Buffalo. And Ryan O'Reilly kind of sounded this horn when he nearly retired from the NHL because he couldn't stand playing in Buffalo anymore. Sucked the soul out of him. Don Granato, who used to coach the Sabres, says it's a really disheartening place. That's what he said. Kevin Adams said, we're not a destination. We don't have palm trees. Yeah, but Edmonton's not a destination. And yet they made it to a Stanley Cup final last year. The Florida Panthers were not a destination until like 5-6 years ago. They were a joke. Yeah, they had palm trees and they had Mai Tais and beautiful women on the beaches and South Beach and all that. Great. Nobody cared. Nobody wanted to play for the Panthers. People were okay playing for the Lightning. Nobody wanted to play for the Florida Panthers. And yet they made it to 2 straight Stanley Cup finals. You make yourself a destination by winning, period. There are franchises that will always have a leg up in this regard and have a benefit. In hockey, Rangers, Leafs, Montreal, that might be it. That might be it in hockey. There's not many in any sport. Like the Kansas City Chiefs were not a draw. They became a draw because Kelsey was great and Patrick Mahomes is the greatest quarterback to ever play the game. And Andy Reid said, holy shit, I can go draft that guy. That's fun. But they became a draw by winning. They became a draw by being the best. Buffalo was good in the 2005, 2006, 7, 8, 9. Making it to conference finals with Ryan Miller and Lindy Ruff and Maxim Afinogenov and Danny Briere. I'm thinking of my youth, fun teams to watch play hockey. Incredibly dynamic. And they made it work. This team doesn't care about defensive responsibilities. This team doesn't care about what they should be doing on the ice. They care about what they want to do. I watched bits and pieces of their game against the Leafs last night because football was on and I don't care enough to watch that game. What I did watch of it, it's a game they should have won. The Leafs are playing their third string goalie who wanted you to win the game. And you play good for a period and then you don't show the fuck up for the next two? You let John Tavares put a hat trick on you? And you let Nick Robertson, who's press box Nick, get 2 points on you? That's more embarrassing than putting 10 losses in a row. The Sabres suck. And it can be, let's fire Kevin Adams. Let's fire Lindy Ruff. What's going to change? They almost have to look in the mirror and go, is there a hockey trade out there for an adult? Could we, just as an example, could we call up Dallas, who lost Tyler Seguin, who might want some younger players, and we could get a haul? Like, do you consider trading Tage Thompson? I would. Because I think this team needs a fucking wake-up call. And this team needs something different. Because you can have a really good player. But if nothing happens while you have that really good player, then what's it worth? Columbus had Rick Nash for the longest time, and they didn't win anything with Rick Nash. So you have a good player on a shitty team. Great. San Jose is in a complete rebuild. They are in a better situation than Buffalo long term. I like San Jose. San Jose has 27 points. That's more than Buffalo. San Jose competes hard every night, and they seem to know defensive responsibilities. Macklin Celebrini is a point per game player in year one. He's a blossoming star. Mikael Granlund is a veteran and somehow has found his game in San Jose. Point per game guy. Nothing is off the table if I was the GM of the Sabres. Because it's not working. And based on this season, the answers are in this locker room as a cliche as old as time. But, okay, you find answers and you finish 10th in the Eastern Conference, and you miss the playoffs for the 14th straight year, and then you go into next season going, oh, we had a really good end to last season, and you're hoping for something to change. You're hoping. There's no guarantees there. Ottawa they changed their lineup bit by bit. And we don't know if it's going to be successful. They haven't made the playoffs yet. And they will be judged harshly if they don't. But I mean, the Sabres are in a really dark place. And they need to find their way. They just need to win a game, right? Their goal, number one, find a way to win. You don't want to go into the Christmas break and not having won a game in a month. Sabres at Montreal tomorrow. That's the game. That's the game. If you're going to win one, at Montreal. Two bad teams playing against each other. Sure, it's on the road. Don't care. So then they go home, Toronto, at Boston, at Islanders before the Christmas break. Come up with an effort tomorrow night. Try it. See if it works. All right. Let's move to our feature stories. Buffalo Bills, Detroit Lions yesterday. Did you watch it? Hope so. It's a lot of fun. Two different stories from this game for yours truly that piqued my interest. And they are surrounding both teams. Number one, the NFL MVP race is over. It's signed, sealed, delivered to Josh Allen, and I think he will win the award unanimously. And not only do I think he should win the award unanimously, if he doesn't, there's a glitch in the system. Because to me, he is playing the best in the sport. He might not finish on the team with the best record, but the Buffalo Bills have beaten Detroit, the best team in the NFC, and they've beaten Kansas City, the best team in the AFC this year. And now he is a minus 900 favorite on FanDuel to win the MVP. Lamar Jackson plus 750, who had 5 touchdowns yesterday, doesn't matter. Saquon Barkley plus 1,500, slow day and a win. Jared Goff at plus 2,200. I think Goff should have the second best odds, personally. Doesn't matter after that. He's winning it. Unanimous MVP for him. He's been superb all season long. The Bills put up over 100 points their last 2 games. They only won one of those games. 4 total touchdowns yesterday for Josh Allen. But this year, completing 64% of his passes, almost 3,400 yards passing, 25 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He's also ran the ball 91 times for 484 yards. That's 5 yards a clip and 11 touchdowns. Second most rushing touchdowns by a quarterback on the season, behind only Jalen Hurts. He's also combined for over 10 touchdowns in his last 2 games, both road games, against teams who currently lead their division, the Rams and the Lions. He's been a superhero. He's a physical force. He can't be stopped for now. What happens in the playoffs is irrelevant to what he's done in the regular season. He's been fantastic. He's playing on a team that lost Stephon Diggs. They chose to get rid of him. They drafted Keon Coleman out of Florida State, who's been injured and has been up and down in his rookie year. Made Khalil Shakir the number 1 wide receiver on the team. Traded for Amari Cooper from the Cleveland Browns. Playing both Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox at tight end. James Cook, Ray Davis at running back. Not elite names. No Justin Jefferson. No Roma Dunze. No number 1 wide receivers, one might argue. No A.J. Brown on the Buffalo Bills. And he's playing as if he's got Jerry Rice playing alongside him. He's looked that good. He's been that dominant for the Buffalo Bills. And if he wasn't on this team, I don't know if they make the playoffs, because their defense sucks. Their defense has given up close to 100 points the last 2 weeks. Their defense gives up chunk play after chunk play. Their defense gave up 5 touchdowns to Jared Goff yesterday. Their defense allowed the Lions to get back into the game, and it came down to the wire. If the Bills don't get to a Super Bowl this year, it won't be because of Josh Allen. It'll be because of that defense, period. Greg Rousseau is on the field. Von Miller is on the field. You look at some of their best players healthy. Matt Milano coming back on the field, and yet they're still getting torched. They're still a liability. Something has to give here. This can't keep happening if they are going to win the Super Bowl. They have 3 weeks until the playoffs against 3 terrible teams. It's a cupcake schedule. New England twice, Jets. This next 3 weeks is a training camp for their defense to get better and to have confidence going into the playoffs, where you're actually going to have to beat and play well against good quarterbacks and good offenses. Because if we look at the elite of the NFL, just the elite teams in the sport, the Bills this year, we're going to go back all the way to September. Beat Arizona, winning record, gave up 28. Beat the Dolphins, gave up 10, don't have a winning record. Beat the Jaguars, gave up 10, don't have a winning record. Lost to the Ravens, gave up 35. Lost to the Texans, gave up 23. That's a good one for them. Beat the Jets, gave up 20. Beat the Titans, gave up 10. Beat the Seahawks. Okay, team above 500, good, gave up 10. Dolphins, who cares? Colts, below 500. Chiefs, 21, okay. 49ers, sub 500. Rams, 44. Lions, 48. So you look, Rams, Lions, Cardinals, Ravens, all over 35 points. against good quarterbacks and the best team in the sport, this defense can't stop a thing. Jared Goff was awesome yesterday. And they've had big play after big play. And Buffalo tried, that defense tried to lose that game. But they survived. So for me, the Bills, yes, Josh, the next 3 weeks are irrelevant. They're going to win their next 3 games. They're going to be competing for the top spot in the AFC with Kansas City, competing for home field advantage. But this defense needs to wake up. This secondary needs to tackle, needs to cover, needs to make a play that's competent. But regardless what happens over the next 3 weeks, Josh Allen is the MVP. Nothing will change that fact for me. I don't care. He could have 8 interceptions over the next 3 games. He's still the MVP. Because he's been the best player in the sport. And he's been on a team that isn't loaded with talent, and they have an awesome record, and they've beaten 2 of the best teams in the sport. Kansas City and Detroit. The 2 teams I had going to the Super Bowl before the year. That's impressive. And they beat Detroit on the road. Also impressive. Now to the Lions side of things. Lions beat the Packers on Thursday Night Football. Came down to the wire, but they won. They played the Bills. They're down by 100. They claw their way back, but yet they lose. And now they have 2 losses on the season. They have the same record as the Eagles, but they currently hold the tiebreaker. So if they win out, they're the number 1 seed in the NFC. Okay. But yet you also can look at it and go, this defense is just, it's wounded. I got some info here. It's quite startling. The Detroit Lions have used 29 different defensive starters this season. Most in the NFL by 8 players. The Detroit Lions currently have 14 defensive players on injured reserve. 7 more than the next closest NFL team. This defense was pretty good to start the season. It had Alex Anzalone. It had Aiden Hutchinson. It had Alum McNeil. It had Carlton Davis playing corner, Super Bowl champion. It doesn't have any of those players anymore. They're all gone, done. They have lost multiple linebackers. Huge weakness on their team. A strength has become a weakness, and now I worry that a Lions season that looked like it could result in a Super Bowl, that looked like it could end a streak, could be a Hollywood ending for the Detroit Lions, is not going to happen because of injuries to that defense. I don't know how they can overcome this. As good as Jared Goff has been and was yesterday, and he was fantastic, I look and go, okay, you scored 42. Your quarterback was phenomenal. He didn't turn the ball over. He threw the ball 59 times, almost for 500 yards, 5 touchdowns. Amon-Ra St. Brown almost went for 200. 5 touchdown passes to 5 different receivers. Hard to do. You averaged over 4.5 yards a carry. and yet you lose. And for the Lions, it was great. As you go 9 points to the Cowboys, 13 to the Cardinals, 16 to the Bucks, 20 to the Rams, 14 to the Packers, 23 to the Texans, 6 to the Jags, 6 to the Colts, 20 to the Bears. Now 31 to Green Bay in a win, 48 to the Bills in a loss. They're now tied with the Eagles for the best record in the NFC, and also tied with the Vikings, if the Vikings can win tonight, for the best record in the NFC North. They finish at Bears, at 49ers, home to the Vikings. It could come down to that last game, although the Vikings do have to play Green Bay in there. And Green Bay is looking very good, looking better by the week. Just with the team not fully healthy, I think they're vulnerable. I think we're going to get to Philly. I think Philly's really good. I think full strength, Detroit's better than Philly. I don't know if they are anymore. I can't say definitively that they are. Green Bay, if Jordan Love's not turning the ball over and they're running the ball effectively with Josh Jacobs, and that defense is attacking the opposing quarterback like they did, they hurt Geno Smith last night, they're a force. They're a problem. They're not a fun problem to deal with, quite frankly. And the Lions also learned today that one of the two-headed monster at running back, David Montgomery, tore his MCL, needs surgery, out for the season. When it rains, it pours. They're too injured. They're too wounded. They couldn't stop the Bills yesterday. They had no answer for Josh Allen. And Dan Campbell gets criticized for going for an onside kick with 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Here's the thing. I wouldn't have had an issue with it if the NFL didn't have a stupid rule where you had to tell the opposing team that you're going for the onside kick. I hate that. It eliminates the element of surprise. It would eliminate the Saints winning the Super Bowl in 2006. They started the second half with an onside kick. They recovered it, beating the Colts, beating Drew Brees, winning his only Super Bowl against Peyton Manning. That wouldn't have happened. That's history. Would have been wiped away because now you have to say when you're going for the onside kick as a safety and blah, 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 stupid crap. Hate that. If he didn't have to tell them, hey, I'm going for an onside kick, I would have went for it too because that defense was stopping nobody and they were down 10. And Buffalo scored in the next possession on one play because Mac Hollins returned it to the 4. But that defense wasn't getting off the field. That defense wasn't getting a stop. It hadn't all day long. Why did you think it was going to happen then? To me, Dan Campbell is going to have to be aggressive the rest of the year. And he goes for the most fourth downs in football. Love that. Love that. I want a coach that's not afraid to go and do ballsy things. To go, you know what? Yeah, we're going to go for it on 4th and 8 on their 45 because we don't want to kick a long field. I love that. don't like conservatism. Other than for my politics. But other than that, I don't need it. It's fun. I just Dan Campbell, Matt LaFleur, Mike McDaniel, if he had a good quarterback. If he had a good quarterback, it would work more often. Sean McDermott started to do it more in Buffalo because he knows he's got Josh Allen. John Harbaugh in Baltimore, when you have Lamar, you go, yep, let's go for it on fourth down because I trust that my player is better than your player, which I think's fair. Because I'll go with the better player every time. And if I think my quarterback's better than your defense, like it's different if you're Raiders and you have Desmond Ridder under center, then I go, yeah, let's punt. Because I don't trust this guy to make a smart decision. But I worry about that's tough for the Lions. And I really think it might wipe away a Super Bowl season for them. The fact that they just don't have enough good, healthy bodies to win anymore. They had a great defense to start the year. They had a good defensive coordinator in Aaron Glenn. When you're on third, fourth string guys, when you're on guys that weren't on your team to start the year and they're playing meaningful snaps, you can only do so much. You can only fight that off for so long before you go, oh, we're kind of screwed here. We're in a really tough situation. And you have a Green Bay who's healthier. You have a Minnesota who's healthier and dangerous and has a really good defense. Philly, who is as well constructed a team as any team in football. They just are. But Detroit, they need to hope to get the number 1 seed. At Bears, at San Francisco, 2 teams below 500, 2 teams that will have very little to play for over the last 3 weeks of the season. But they're games nonetheless, and you have to win them. And then they have Minnesota in the last week of the year. At home. Minnesota, they are home to the Bears tonight, Monday Night Football. At Seattle next Sunday. Home to the Packers in Week 17, who they beat earlier this year in September in Green Bay. And then at Detroit in Week 18 to wrap up the season. So after tonight, 3 games against all teams that are above 500. But Seattle is wounded. They might not have Geno Smith on their center. So there's always that to look at. Let's talk about Philadelphia. Philadelphia beat the Steelers yesterday. Covered the spread. Didn't think they would. They did. They had 4 possessions that were over 7 minutes long. They just possessed the ball. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith both had over 100 yards receiving. Both had a touchdown reception. Jalen Hurts, 2 touchdown passes, 1 rushing touchdown on the day. Might have been his best game of the season. He was efficient, had control of the game, didn't put the ball in harm's way. Ran the ball 15 times for 45 yards. 7 incomplete. He was just really good. Saquon only had 65 yards rushing. But with Hurts, Kenneth Gainwell stepping up in the game. If you look at Jalen Hurts' numbers, he's not all that impressive. He's thrown for less than 3,000 yards. 18 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Has lost 5 fumbles. 14 rush touchdowns, almost 600 yards rushing. So he's a dual threat, but he also runs for way less yards per attempt than, say, Josh Allen. And both guys are touchdown machines on the ground. But their defense starting to come together. Vic Fangio has that group playing really well. Josh Sweat on the edge played extremely well yesterday in that victory. And Nakobe Dean has been awesome all year long. Nolan Smith had another sack yesterday. Cooper DeJean's been really fun. To me, they're the most talented team right now. Top to bottom in the NFC. If we look at FanDuel odds to win their conference, Philly and Detroit are both at +2 even odds right now, at +220. And Philly, coming up to wrap up their season, at the Washington football team this coming Sunday, host the Cowboys, and finish up hosting the Giants. So 3 division games, 2 teams in there that have losing records. So even with that Commanders road game, which will kind of be a home game because there'll be a lot of Philly fans there, that should be 3 wins. I don't think the Eagles are going to lose again this year. I think they're going to be 15-2. And they're going to put pressure on the Lions to win their last 3 games to get home field advantage and to get that first round bye. I think the Eagles are under a ton of pressure, but they're doing a really good job of hiding the fact that they are. You had that squabble with A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts. Okay, you have a really good game. You celebrate a touchdown together in the end zone. Kind of thrown under the rug. They lost in embarrassing fashion last year to the Bucs. Who cares? We got past it. Nick Sirianni's still here, and he's only lost 2 games this year as our head coach. He hasn't lost a game since October. So I think they know big expectations. You get to the playoffs, you get to the NFC Championship game, or else, in all likelihood. But it's not a team that acts like they have to, that has such a great team that has to get to they have those high expectations. And that's a good thing. If you're not feeling it, if you're not showing it on the outside, they're just playing football. And I think they're having fun. And they're controlling the clock and they're controlling games because they have the ability to, because they can run, they can pass, they can do anything they want. So they're threatening. They're a good team. Dallas Goedert with A.J. Brown, with Devontae Smith, Saquon, Gainwell, Lane Johnson in your offensive. I mean, they're loaded. So many different ways that team can beat you. You want to have a physical game with them, they're going to run the football, they can do that. You want to throw the ball down the field, take some chances? A.J. Brown's a good 50-50 ball receiver that there is in the NFL because he's so big. Because he's such a force. And they beat Philly. So they beat Pittsburgh. Yes, Pittsburgh's a good team. Pittsburgh's 10-4. Disappointing game for them. They were in it. Najee Harris fumble really killed their momentum. They didn't have the ball for most of the game after that. Russell Wilson, he was okay. I've kind of had the same opinion about the Steelers since the beginning. Playoff team, could they surprise somebody in the playoffs? Maybe. They got the Ravens this weekend. The Ravens could absolutely win back home field advantage. Because the Steelers, to me, offensively, when George Pickens is not on the field, and he hasn't been the last 2 weeks, they really lack big playability. They really lack creativity. And we've seen in the last couple of years with quarterbacks that are worse than Russell Wilson. Yes. But they got to the playoffs and they just went against tougher competition and they spiraled out. Other than the Broncos, you could tell me that the Steelers are playing the Ravens, Chargers, Bills, Chiefs, of course. I could go down the list, more teams, and I wouldn't be surprised that the Steelers lost to them, quite frankly. Maybe even Houston. And I'd go, you know what? Yeah, that's possible. I could see that happening. And maybe it won't. Maybe they'll beat the Ravens and they have a game against the Chiefs, and then I think they finish against the Bengals. And they find ways to win games, and they're already finishing above 500, so that doesn't matter. They've already clinched the playoff spot. They already have 10 wins, which is crazy good for them. But again, it's a situation where I look up and go, it's a team that Russell Wilson's your quarterback. He's okay at the position. He's by no means elite. He's by no means a guy that I fear. Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, okay. I love Pickens. I really like Pat Freiermuth. Really good in the end zone, makes tough catches. But if TJ Watt's banged up going into the playoffs, and that secondary has been picked on the last couple weeks, Joey Porter Jr., Dante Jackson having a tough time covering the best wide receivers in the NFL, they could lose another first-round playoff game again, and it wouldn't be a total surprise. Recapping the rest of the day, if you look at the AFC, I think we know the playoff teams. To me, it's done. Right now, Chiefs, Bills, Steelers, Texans. Those 4 teams have all clinched a playoff spot. They're going. Wild cards right now, number 1, Baltimore at 9-5. Denver, second wild card, 9-5. Chargers, 8-6. Broncos, Chargers play against each other this coming Thursday. After that, you have the Colts, Dolphins, Bengals, all at 6-8. All need to win and all need a lot of help to make the playoffs. The Colts blew a game against Denver. Jonathan Taylor dropped the ball before he crossed the plane of the end zone, which would have been a touchdown. They ran a trick play where a wide receiver tried to throw it back to Anthony Richardson that was taken to the house for a pick 6. So Broncos stomped the Colts. Broncos, to me, they're going to the playoffs. Chargers, Bengals, Chiefs. Tough schedule. 2 of those games on the road. But already having 9 wins, that worst you're going to be is 9-8. If the Colts are 9-8, you beat the Colts, you own the tiebreaker. And the Colts could be 9-8 because the Colts finish home Titans, at New York, home Jacksonville. That's as easy as it gets. So they could be 9-8, but it won't matter. Because Denver might win a game. They could beat the Chargers. The Chargers, 8-6, tough loss to the Bucs. They got Broncos at home Thursday night, at Patriots, at Raiders. Worst case, they win 2 of those games, they get to 10 wins. They could win all 3 and they get to 11. Then they're ahead of the Broncos. So I don't see a situation where they lose more than one of those games. They're not losing to the Patriots. They're not losing to the Raiders. Period. Chargers are going to be a playoff team in year 1 with Jim Harbaugh. The Broncos are getting to the playoffs with first-year starter Bo Nix. He had 3 interceptions in the first half, but then had 3 touchdown passes in the second half. He bounced back, and the Ravens are making the playoffs. The Ravens, sure, they have their ups and downs, and they're frustrating, but I think they're going to beat the Steelers at home this weekend. If they beat the Steelers at home this weekend, they clinch a playoff spot, so that's put to bed. So to me, the AFC it's done. It's wrapped up. Dolphins, you screwed up. You lost to the Texans. You needed a lot of help anyway, but you lost to the Texans. Tua threw 3 interceptions. He was awful yesterday. And this team is just kind of lost. They weren't a great roster. I didn't think they'd be a playoff team. They're not going to be a playoff team. Mike McDaniel, the shine's kind of wearing off there. I don't think they fire him. But it's looking ugly in Miami. Vic Fangio left the organization. Now he's coaching Philly and have a good defense. Your defense, So that's done. NFC, Rams beat San Francisco on Thursday night. Big win. They now lead the NFC West because they beat the 49ers. And then the Seahawks lost to Green Bay last night at home. So Rams now 8-6 going into the last 3 weeks of the season. Rams at Jets, host Cardinals, host Seahawks. So they're in pole position. But only 3 teams have clinched a playoff spot in the NFC so far. Lions, Eagles, Vikings. You have Bucks leading the NFC South. You have the Rams leading the NFC West. Packers at 10-4. They should clinch soon enough. Another win should get them in there. They have Saints, Vikings, Bears. And then the last team in the NFC with a playoff spot, you got the Commanders at 9-5. They're the more interesting one for me. They're not a locked in yet. They barely beat the Saints yesterday, coming off a bye. You have Seahawks 8-6, who have a tough schedule, but could still find a way to sneak in. Cardinals at 7-7. Cardinals at Carolina, at Rams, host 49ers. They've had their ups and downs. I think Washington will likely find a way. Host Eagles on Sunday, host Atlanta, at Dallas to wrap up their season. Can they get to 10 wins? Can they win one of those 3 games? If they upset the Eagles or the Falcons and you beat the Cowboys, you're going to have 11 wins. You're getting in. Period. You're getting in, and you might have – no, you're going to be the last spot because the Vikings already have 11 wins, and they're going to have more than that before the season's over because they're going to beat the Bears tonight and have 12. I think Washington will win enough games down the stretch to find their way into the playoffs. Dan Quinn in year one, Jaden Daniels in year one as a starter. I don't think they'll be that threatening. If they play the Eagles, that's a game I think the Eagles would want. A division opponent who they know really well, a rookie quarterback in his first career playoff game, and you go out there and you just beat the hell out of them. That's a matchup. If you don't get the number one seed, I'd be okay with that. I'd much rather play Washington than play Green Bay, Minnesota, the Rams even, the Bucks. Give me Washington because I think they're by far the worst playoff team of the bunch. But Washington survives yesterday, stopped the 2-point conversion. They got to win 2 of their final 3 likely. They're a playoff team. All will be good in the world. Tonight, 2 Monday Night Football games. Chicago in Minnesota, 9 o'clock kickoff. The Bears are 7-point dogs going into Minnesota. The Bears were crushed against San Francisco last week. Thomas Brown, new interim head coach, trying to prove to the Bears that he deserves to become the permanent head coach after the season's over. Not going to happen. No chance. But it's nice to hope and dream. So, Caleb Williams has had his ups and downs. But now you get to play against Brian Flores and that great Minnesota defense. A defense that has 20 interceptions on the season, which is best in the NFL. Sam Darnold and the Vikings offense, he had 5 touchdown passes last week. Jefferson with 2. Jordan Addison with 2. The Bears' defense is solid. Division games are always weird. Remember, in Soldier Field, it came down to the last onside kick. The Bears went to overtime, and the Vikings survived that game. But that was in Soldier. This is in a dome, controlled environment. Sam Darnold, free to roam around. They're going to be able to run the football. I like the Vikings to cover the 7. Vikings win by at least a touchdown tonight. The Vikings improved to 12-2 on the season. Sam Darnold, an incredible year. Kevin O'Connell, one of the best coaches in the NFL, period, of anybody. I like the Vikings to win by 7. I like Sam Darnold to throw a touchdown pass at least one. I'd like him over 1.5 touchdown passes tonight. And then we got Atlanta in Vegas to play my Raiders. No Max Crosby for the rest of the season for the Raiders. It sounds like he needs surgery. They're going to let him have that, rest up, get ready for next year. The Raiders are in a race with the Giants, hoping to get the number 1 overall pick in the draft. They have to make decisions on whether that their head coach, Antonio Pierce, is the right guy moving forward, whether Shedeur Sanders wants to come play for Vegas, which I think would be interesting, what they want to do with their roster. Brock Bowers is an absolute stud. He's going to be there. But beyond him, the rest of the roster is pretty thin. Falcons, Kirk Cousins has not thrown a touchdown pass in his last 4 games. In that 4-game stretch, he has 0 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and the Falcons have lost 4 in a row. They need to win tonight. They need to keep pace with the Bucs. They need to hope that the Buccaneers lose one of the last 3 games and they can win their last couple of games because that's the only way they're going to make the playoffs. If they lose tonight, it wouldn't be on paper, but it'll effectively end their season. No Aiden O'Connell for the Raiders. Desmond Ridder, former Falcons third-round pick who was cut in training camp. He is starting tonight for the Raiders. Revenge game for Desmond Ridder. Falcons are favored on the road by 5.5 tonight. This was the tougher line, even though the Raiders stink and the Raiders are playing for the number 1 overall pick and not to win the game. I don't trust the Falcons. I don't trust Kirk Cousins. But this Raiders defense does not give me a whole lot of faith. The Raiders this year have only won 2 games. My family and I were at one of them. That was in September. It's been a minute for this team. The 2-11 Raiders. Tied with the Giants. Host the Falcons. Host the Jaguars. At the Saints. Host the Chargers. That's what they have left on their schedule. I like the Falcons. I like both favorites tonight to cover the number. Minnesota -7, Atlanta -5.5. Although, if you wanted to put a teaser on the Raiders and get that up to 7, maybe even 8 points if you want to buy some points, I don't think that's a horrible idea because I think the Raiders can keep this close. Because even though they're not a great team, the Falcons are in complete disarray right now. But they have to win tonight to keep their season alive. Also tonight, we have a rematch of the Stanley Cup Final. Florida in Edmonton playing the Red Hot Oilers, who beat Minnesota on Thursday, beat Vegas on Saturday. Draisaitl's playing like the best player in the world. Stuart Skinner starting to make saves. They are a well-oiled machine. You look, Skinner scores, Perry scores, Draisaitl, Connor Brown, Hyman, Nugent Hopkins. 6 different goal scorers in the 6-3 win. Florida has been shut out in back-to-back games. 4-0 loss in Vancouver, 3-0 loss in in Calgary on Saturday night. They're going to be up for this game. It's a prime Monday night hockey game. Great matchup. Bobrovsky against Skinner. Fun. I think the Oilers get the win tonight because they're just playing really good hockey. And Florida has their issues. Big part of it's their back end. But I'm going to watch some of this game tonight because it's fun. 2 defending champs against the team that was 1 goal away from beating them. And I'm sure the Oilers will want a piece of them tonight because they're still pissed they didn't win. But for Monday night, you get Washington and Dallas. Fun matchup. The Capitals continue to win. They are 21-6-2 on the season. Tom Wilson with another pair of goals on Saturday. Jacob Chikrin has 9 goals on the season for coming over from Ottawa. And you have Colorado-Vancouver tonight. Colorado, Mackenzie Blackwood's been solid since the trade from San Jose. Demko's been less than spectacular. Hasn't won a game yet. But you have that one's 11:30 puck drop, late one tonight in Vancouver. Other news from the weekend, Kyle Tucker traded from the Houston Astros to the Chicago Cubs. They now have an outfield of Kyle Tucker and Seiya Suzuki. They might trade him, but to me, Kyle Tucker's a stud. You can get him. He's a home run. He's a guy who hits for average. He's a pretty good fielder. I like Kyle Tucker. I like the Cubs trying to be aggressive, trying to actually acquire talent that's not over the hill for once. Kyle Tucker, going to the Cubs. What this means for the Astros, I don't really know. Alex Bregman, the third baseman, is still available. Because we've seen a slowdown. The winter meetings are over. Christmas is in a week. Alex Bregman remains a free agent. The polar bear, Pete Alonso, he was at UFC Tampa on Saturday. He's still without a home. He still doesn't have a team for next year. Christian Walker, the Arizona Diamondbacks first baseman, still available. Still some good pieces out there. Nothing big on the chatter, yet we could see guys go into the new year waiting for new homes, waiting till closer to spring training for deals to come together. I don't think Major League Baseball loves that. I don't think it's great for the sport. You want to see activity. You want to see headlines. But nothing today when it comes to rumor mill about baseball and where these guys are going to go. Doesn't sound like the Mets are going to bring back Pete Alonso, partly because they spent so much money on Juan Soto. Could also be because he's not worth it. The Yankees acquired Devin Williams, their closer. Nestor Cortez goes the other way. But nothing big right now. But I love Kyle Tucker to the Cubs because I think he's a star. And Houston team gets worse because they don't have him on it. On Wednesday's show, we're going to talk World Juniors a little bit on that program. We're going to recap tonight's Monday Night Football doubleheader. We'll get into some NHL throughout the week and any other headlines that pop up between now and then. Thank you all for hanging out tonight. Thank you for the continued support as always. I'm your host, Noah Warren, and this is the Live and Learn Podcast.